What's up, man? It's
How you
Friday.
doing?
It was Turkey Day.
It's Friday. Hey, and we got a closing together.
We did. We had one this morning. It went very well.
Yeah, yeah, it went great.
Very
I
well.
saw the property for the first time this morning during
That
the
was the
final
first time you've seen
walkthrough.
it?
Yeah, yeah. I've been in those units before, so I could speak to it. But
Okay.
the guy met the listing agent initially to go through it, and then called me, wanted to write an offer, wanted to find somebody to represent him other than the seller's agent. So got to sort of talk him through the whole thing, write the offer, look at the inspection report, and did the final walkthrough. Got to see it for the first time.
That's awesome.
Obviously, it's a great unit, and it was only built like 4 years ago, so it was easy to understand the condo, easy to understand, and sort of not too many concerns there. But it's funny to have those. Like, oh, this is great. I think you
Yeah.
should buy this.
Right. That's
now that
awesome.
we're this far down the line. But
I didn't know that.
yeah, the other thing that is awesome about it is that he found me online, and found me through my online presence. So he met with the listing agent initially and was looking for a great agent downtown, and was able to find me online and track me down. So speaks to what I'm working on with regard to online presence, social media, um, making myself out there. So
It's important, man. We'll touch
yeah,
on that. But yeah, it's going to be more and more important going forward. I feel like just creating that like you said, you called it a presence, but just people seeing you before they meet you, and they get a feel for who you are, how you work, what you do, your personality. Um, you know, people work with somebody they know, like, and trust, right? They
yeah,
gotta they gotta see you before they do those things, and social media is a big piece of that.
yeah. It's actually the third person that's found me this year that's gone to our team website and picked me out of the lineup. So
You're
um,
just such a handsome fellow, man.
yeah, I don't think that's it, but I do think there's something there to the way you present yourself, and obviously putting links and helping people understand who you are before they meet you. Having a strong bio, having an engaging um, information out there and video and whatever, so they get to know your style, right?
Sure. Sure. No, it's important, man. It's so important. Your social media kind of allows you to become like an authority figure of sorts, right? Where you're a subject matter expert. Um, I'm a part of a coaching community, and the big thing with social media and your social media presence is you want to be seen before you're known, liked, and trusted.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so those people see you. They see your stuff, they see your content. They see what you're doing with the family. What your hobbies are. You kind of create that. Uh, I guess brand avatar for yourself for that ideal client. Who do you want to work with? What kind of content are you putting out there to kind of attract the person that you want to work with?
yeah. Some version of relatability or authority, right? You're
Yeah,
either someone that they um, see a version of themselves, or where they were, whatever, and can relate in that way, or you become a trusted figure because of your knowledge
yeah,
and expertise, right?
100%, man.
Uh, yeah. So um, another thing that happened recently, I got rated number 66 realtor for social media presence in the state of Ohio.
Okay, that's good stuff.
Um, yeah, Property Spark found me and found my brand online, and just started looking. And this is the second time I've been rated on their platform. I think it was um, I don't know, maybe 22 or something like that in Columbus a
Hmm.
couple years ago. But get an email out of the blue, and it's like, hey, we just found, we rated you number 66 um, on our site, and it's a pretty cool thing to be able to have them find you organically like that
That's
and rate
super cool.
you. Yeah, I mean, I'm working on my social media. I'm getting better every day, but that's something that I don't consider myself an expert in by any stretch of the imagination. So, but I know I got to just chip away at it and get better and put myself out there. So, to be rated 66 out of tens of thousands of realtors,
Sure. It's good stuff. It's real
yeah,
good stuff.
no, you're doing something right, right?
Of course. Yeah, man.
So let's start with local news real quick. Just announced yesterday, Amazon is investing in Sunbury. They're building a $2 billion data center. Um, 50 new jobs. I think one of the things that I just wanted to speak about is one, it's great that Columbus has been such a um,
Attraction.
target. Yeah, for data center, and I think we'll see them here a lot more just because the build out of data centers is so necessary for everything that is online and I guess the disappointing part about it is it's only creating 50 new jobs,
Right.
and of course you have these enormous facilities. It's only creating 50 new jobs. I'd love to see more corporate offices or something that has more,
More job
I would
opportunity.
say, more job opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess Sunbury annexed a large piece of land, and that over time, there's probably some incentive there, like some
Hmm.
tax, short-term tax, like New Albany does a 15-year abatement on taxes, but long-term, hopefully there's some great tax incentive there. And of course, a $2 billion investment is a huge chunk. Um, we're seeing data centers built. There's a brand new Google data center being built in sort of New Albany, Columbus pocket, and they're adding on to a data center across the street. Then I think Meta has the biggest data center in the country,
Oh, really? I didn't
in
know that.
that uh, annex section of New Albany.
Sure.
That's just to the east. So these are just going to pop up everywhere, and I guess the tax incentive long term is something that's really exciting. I guess I'm a bit maybe concerned about where the power comes from.
Hmm.
All these companies are talking about re-signing nuclear power plants that have
Hmm.
gone offline, purchasing them and helping bring them back online.
Okay.
I know the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant um, was just purchased. It should be back online. There's a couple others,
Oh,
and
wow.
so I think nuclear is probably one of the ways that um, we might eventually see something happen here in
Sure.
Columbus
Could be.
with regard to meet electricity demands. I feel good and bad about being near so many data centers
Right.
in New Albany. I think the one thing is I think these power companies want that to be the last thing that goes offline or lose power.
Sure.
And so maybe we see a lot of that, but hopefully that doesn't increase cost of power locally because of the demand that those data centers are creating, because we have so many of them popping up. That's such
Yeah.
a new thing, and they're just huge consumers. So
Well, the thing to, you know, be mindful of is, in terms of what we do every day and just kind of relating it back to, the economy here and housing and affordability and all of those things. I know obviously it's been covered at nausea, the amount of people that, that are flocking here, to fill some of those jobs. Um, and I think that we become a high profile target as a city just because of the affordability. And I know probably a lot of people who live here, they might not see it that way as affordability, right? With what some of the prices are now, but comparatively speaking, nationwide to other marketplaces, our affordability is much better. I'm interested to see the compounding effect of that and how that plays into property taxes and what those, look like 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, with price growth. I know I did a piece of content on that recently. There was a lot of nationwide, a lot of, tax issues on ballots state by state, because people are feeling it. So it's kind of interesting as you see these things kind of play, how that true into what we're working on a day-to-day basis, and trying to find suitable, affordable housing for people.
Yeah, I think there's going to be long-term pressure on property taxes locally. Obviously, I don't see them receding, but we do have really high property taxes here, as compared to a lot of other places around the country. And when you talk about the inflation that we've had with housing prices, with where mortgage rates are, and where we expect them to be long term, those things are not going to adjust downward in any big way, as far as we see. Right? There's no downward pressure there at the moment, or anything major. So I think that if property prices continue to increase, insurance costs, we know, are also something that's continuing to increase as well.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of owning a home here locally is going to continually raise over time, which is going to create great equity for people that do own homes.
Sure.
But at the same time, become more expensive to move and relocate and move up and all those things. So I think that one of the ways that the consumer has the most control over the cost of living is voting for different property tax levies and the way that property taxes are adjusted locally. And so there may be more consideration there about the different ballot items that come up.
Yeah, man. It's
and more pushback there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just I do we've had discussions about this. I've been expanding in the Florida market, and while their price point is higher than it is here, taxes are substantially less, and that's a big part of that affordability equation, right? How do how do these government agencies fund what they need to, while still trying to maintain an affordable tax point for the consumer. And it's a balancing act, and it's not, I think a lot of people try to oversimplify and be like, well, we need to do this or do that, and it's not necessarily a cookie cutter answer on how you fix that. It's a complex situation to try to figure out. At the end of the day, I think I don't know, when it comes to the the whole property tax thing, I feel like the more money you can kind of put in people's pockets, the more money you put in people's pockets, the more they're going to spend it anyway. So, on the property taxes, it's like, if I can save X amount of dollars per month because my taxes are less, I might some of those people are just going to turn around and buy a more expensive house anyways. So I don't know. That money gets burned in a hole in people's pockets.
Yeah. But I mean, people want a nicer house, right? So
right.
If they can push back to be able to afford a nicer house, maybe that's what happens.
I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, I've done some content on that recently. Just a lot of my stuff's been on affordability. And because I feel like that's one of the most pressing issues right now when you think of what we're doing and what we're dealing with every day, and trying to just get educational stuff or content out there that, really revolves around sitting down with somebody and having a thorough consultation and going through your budget and looking at things and what is affordable. Don't not relying on some online calculator or, some news article that you read that says rates are this, or, sit down with somebody, go through it all. And that's kind of, been the overarching, theme for stuff that I've been putting out anyways.
Yeah. And I think it's through your content and or a sit down that you and I might have with a prospective buyer. It's managing misconceptions, lack of knowledge,
It's a lot.
that they may have that may help them understand what they can afford a little bit better, right?
Sure. Yeah, we live in like an information age, and more information isn't necessarily a good thing, right? Take the time, sit down with a professional. Somebody's going to take care of you and figure things out, and then factor in all these, these costs, right? Because your homeowner, your cost of home ownership is much more than, hey, what's my rate, what's my payment, what's my taxes, what's my insurance? Am I going to have a $20,000 roof I got to repair in 5 years? Is insurance going to cover it? That's the whole thing I can speak to just from personal experience, because we did our roof, and that was the biggest pain on the planet going through that, because insurance companies don't want to cover anything now, because they're paying out the wazoo, with all the natural disasters and things of that nature that have, hit other states like that. Those companies, like that, passes through to everybody. So, you see those things tightening up, then that's something as a home buyer or prospective homeowner, you've got to be mindful of and kind of prepare for, right? What's my basement look like? What's, what high ticket items are coming down the line? Because that, what we're seeing on the mortgage side more and more is, since people are more strapped, they're also buying closer to the upper end of, like, when I sit down with somebody, we do a very thorough consultation, right? But one of the things we spend a lot of time on is budget, and not just like, hey, how much house do you want to buy? Like, no, at the end of the day, what do you want your payment to look like? And, how much does that leave you stocking away every month? Because I don't want you to be house poor. I want you to save some money, build a retirement, and help you build some wealth, right? So let's talk about it beyond, hey, here's what we can get you eligible for a house. Like, let's help you. Let's advise you and help you plan this out where you're, putting yourself in a good position long term. And those are pieces that come into that. So, if you're in a spot where you're strapped, like I said, because, everybody's buying at the upper end of what that budget looks like, and then furnace goes out, you don't have cash. Okay. So now you're going to finance it, okay, I got a flat tire. Now I got to get new tires for the car. All right, I got cash. I got to finance that. Then it starts to compound, and it, that can spiral out of control quickly. We've had,
especially with such an inflationary environment we've been living in, where everything's 100%. getting more expensive, and
your disposable income's less. Like, at the end of the day, by the time, if you take it, say you make $120K a year, so 10K, you take home what, $7,500, by the time you pay all. So then, okay, I've got a mortgage. What's the average mortgage payment? What's my car payment, gas, groceries? Like, then you start chopping it up, and you're like, well, I don't have a whole lot for saving, for giving, for, doing things that I just want to go do and enjoy life. So, we've had a lot of, conversations with people that have got themselves in the last, 24, 36 months, got themselves into, a pile of credit card debt. Luckily for a lot of those people, because of, some of the increases in home equity, we've been able to do some things to, help them out and kind of bail them out.
Not if you're a first-time home buyer, right?
Right. But if you're if you're a first-time home buyer, then, you're kind of looking at this like, okay, well, on that topic of affordability, like, where, I buy this house, okay, I can afford a $2,000 a month mortgage payment. Okay. Property taxes go up next year. So now that 2,000 became 2,300, and was like, well, this is really stretching my budget. And then again, then the hot water heater goes out or whatever it is. And now all of a sudden you're, in over your head. And I think, as professionals, it's a conversation that a lot of people aren't doing a good job of having, if I'm honest, because it's just about, hey, let's just get this deal so I can, get my commission and go,
Yep.
and I can post my
100%.
just sold on Instagram.
Yeah, no, it really does, and I think to that point, my job in that is educating on costs of owning a home, and that's inspection, educating them on different pieces of the inspection. We're doing a lot of as-is deals, and so there are a lot of deals where the buyer is taking on repairs that they have to either budget into the initial first couple months of them owning the home, or they're budgeting for I'm going to fix it within the next couple years, based on the need and immediacy of the problem.
Sure.
And that's something that you're writing an offer based on, here's the cost. You, Steve, are saying, okay, well, based on the price you're buying at, here's the cost, here's what, and then all of a sudden they're having an inspection and finding out there's more issues that they might have to take on, to buy the house that they like and they were willing to write an offer on and get a contract on. So
sure,
there is a bit of a cost there that I'm trying to educate people about upfront, and during the initial buyer consultation, and also while we're seeing houses, me pointing out things during the showings that are going to be costs, or come up on an inspection so that they know it well in advance.
Sure.
Hey, this is something to budget in. Like, when you're writing your offer, make sure that this is included in your thought process, so that your payment doesn't all of a sudden get so extreme that you're already uncomfortable again. Because, just like you said, that people are really sort of, with affordability the way that it is, their desire for the best possible home, they're almost always pushing towards the top of their budget.
Every time.
And so it gets hairy. And what we want to do is close the deal and get it to closing, but we want to do it in the way that puts them in the best possible scenario. Sure. That's why your teamwork is valuable. That's why between the two of us, we're able to have a really high close rate.
Sure. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you hear people throw around the term fiduciary all the time, but I feel like they do it when it's convenient, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a convenience term that gets tossed around, where it's like, well, I've got a fiduciary to my client. Well, you don't get to a la carte your fiduciary duty to your client. Like that applies to everything. That might mean bringing up something that could potentially spook a client into not wanting to do something. But, at the end of the day, if something like that comes up and that's, spooks that client out of doing it, well, I mean, I hate to say this, but maybe they shouldn't have been buying in the first place. Does that mean that you maybe didn't make a sale or close a deal? Sure. Is that the goal? No. But at the same time, that fiduciary term is not an a la carte term, that you don't get, what's the word I'm trying to think, that doesn't, you don't get anonymity to that. Like when it comes to your paycheck, like that applies to everything.
100%. Yeah. And it, that's what brings people back, though, is them understanding that you're looking out for their best interests.
Yep.
God, I talk people out of so many damn houses, and I've seen other agents that are.
Why people like just working with you.
Yeah, I think other agents. I've seen so many other agents that are just so great at sealing the deal on whatever. And I'm more of a like, hey, I wouldn't buy this house if I were you. I know your budget. I know there's other things that have come up. I
Where
see.
that lender realtor relationship is ultra important, right? It's very important for you to work with, a lender that does a very thorough consultation and understands budget and communicates that well with you in those discussions. Because a lot of times, when it comes to budget stuff, clients don't want to share things that, there can be some embarrassment. Like, I don't want to, I don't want them to think that I can't afford. There's a lot of pieces that go into that, right? So it's very important to work with, a lender that covers all those things, communicates those well to the real estate agent involved, and they're kind of working, in unison with one another, where everybody's on the same page. We know what budget is, we know what we're looking at, and then that way, you set the buyer up for success. And then at the end of the day, that's going to turn into more transactions, because those people are going to be the first ones that refer you someone else, or singing your praises to somebody at the office, or somebody at the, soccer game, or whatever it is, that, hey, you need to talk to my guy before you do anything.
Yeah. It's funny. I two things. One is I try to make an effort to not put an extraordinary amount of questions into their budget and their affordability, their cash on hand. I have the conversations around, these are the type of things you're seeing, these are the things you need to be prepared for financially. And then, when I know that I'm linking them up with a really good lender who's going to have those conversations, as long as I'm having touching the right pieces, where I'm talking about appraisal gap coverage, where I'm talking about their down payment and what they're comfortable with, and talking about where their payment is now, and hoping, not hoping that rates are going to get better.
Yeah. That's a big one.
That's where I'm sort of
I cringe every time I hear somebody talking about, like, well, you're going to do X, and then, we can always refinance. It's like, they might, but they might not. We also thought rates were going to be in the 5s by the end of the year. And here we are, the average. I don't like doing this on a podcast, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Do it. Let's hear it.
Mortgage News Daily is 7.03.
Wow.
An even better tool for people if you're ever looking for mortgage averages, like Google, if you just Google 30-year mortgage rates, there's like an interactive chart where you can like kind of put your credit score range in there, adjust for your down payment and purchase price. So it's a little bit more accurate potentially to your, scenario. And usually when you do that, you get a higher rate than you see even on those averages.
So tell me about the rate conversations you're having, how you're prepping
Sure.
buyers. And, I'll just start this off real quick just by saying the conversations that we've talked about recently within our team is, listen, rates are not expected to move in any extraordinary way. Really be focused on, does this work now? And there's no reason, especially when the market's sort of a little bit of a buyer's market at the moment,
Sure.
Before we head into spring, is there a way that you can get more concessions, more lower price, a better deal during this time, rather than sitting around waiting on your hands for the rates to improve?
Yeah, no, I kind of relate it all back to, you're not going to time the market perfectly. So whenever I discuss, rates with a client, we kind of talk where the averages are. I start there. Because I also like to illustrate for us specifically, like where we are in comparison to the averages, because we're generally going to be lower. So, I start the conversation there. But even before we get into the rates, I start, the rates are what they are. What's more important is your budget. Like what can you've got cash coming in, you've got cash going out. The rate, of course, is important and it plays into that, but let's start there. And then let's go into your cash budget. How much cash do I have to put into this? Like, hey, I've got $100,000 in a savings account. Do you need to or want to put all of it in there? Do you only want to put 50 of it? Do you want to put, whatever into this? And then let's work our way backwards into price and rate. Yeah. So we'll kind of reverse engineer it from there based off of your budget. Then, rates, then we'll go into, like I just said, hey, here's where the averages are, yada, yada, here's where we are. And then it's a conversation around, usually you kind of feel it out, right? Like any kind of salesperson that's worth half their weight can, kind of pick up on, cues and figure out whether or not somebody's, that turns them off or they're excited about it or not. At the end of the day, that's why you start with the budget first and then work your way into the rate. If you start with rate, sometimes you might just spook somebody out of it and not even get to have the conversation. But then it's, hey, I know the rate is important to you. It's important to me too. I want you to get the best rate possible. Do not try to time this. You're not going to, the likelihood that you're going to time this perfectly is nearly impossible. I mean, how many buyers do both of us have from 2020, 2021 that, were, trying to time this out? Well, I'm just going to wait for things to slow down where I, don't have to offer, 30, 40, 50K over. And now they're like, well, now that the rate's 7%, that's irrelevant. I would have offered 80. I'd offered 80 over to get 299.
They also missed 12 to 24% of appreciation.
Sure.
In a 2-year span or more. I mean, and so
time in the market is more important than timing the market. The longer that works for, financial markets as well, like time in the market over timing the market. You're not going to time this perfectly. And if you do, congrats. But the likelihood of that happening and the weight of like what you're missing out on if you don't time it properly, you just get in the best situation you can. And again, if I don't say when, a lot of people say, hey, when rates come down, we can refinance. I don't, to me, the language, the vernacular that you use with people is very, very impactful. It's very important. I don't say when, I say if and when we can refinance, or if or when we can refinance, we'll take advantage. But at least right now, you're in the best possible spot that you can be in. And then from here, we can improve on it.
So,
because you don't put that false hope in somebody's head, because the last thing you want to do is say, hey, you know what, we're going to do this. You're hearing about it. And some of the agents I work with, like in other markets, Florida's a little bit ahead of us in terms of some of like, everybody's opinion is going to vary on this in terms of market corrections. They're starting to see a market correction because COVID, their values just went vertical. Like if you look at a chart, those things just went straight up, right? So there's people that bought in certain time frames, specifically there with new builds. What you're seeing and what's kind of happening is they bought with a new build. They use these builder incentives for temporary rate buy downs. So when they bought, instead of 7% or 6.99%, they were 4.99%. So, and then year 2, that goes up 1%, year 3, that goes up another percent, right? And then in the meantime, those property taxes fully catch up. So now all of a sudden,
insurance, right?
And then insurance jumps up. So you've got, my rate went from $499 to $699. My property taxes are now, $8, $9, $10,000. And my insurance went from, $200 a month to $400 a month. Well, I can't afford to live. My payment just went up $1,500, right? And then, the values are starting to level off and in some cases draw back. So then they're reaching out to, the agent, maybe they use to buy the place. It's like, hey, I got to sell this. And, if there's a correction, they're like, so
in a bad spot.
You're in a tough spot, right? So again, kind of bringing that full circle, what is the best situation we can get you in right now? Let's not bank on something happening in the future because you don't know, what things are going to happen in the future. I actually have on another monitor here, my scripting for content I'm going to shoot this afternoon, and one of them is Fannie Mae's predictions. They just completely redid their housing predictions for 2025 because now they're saying, oh, rates are going to probably be in the sixes, through 2025. So this whole like, hey, rates are going to do this. These projections that in these articles that people share get changed multiple times. So like, stop, looking for some nugget in the future where you think things are going to become drastically different. Get yourself in the best spot, and then whatever happens is going to happen. You're not going to predict it. You're not going to time it. I think they went from, I'd have to pull it up. I don't have the stats memorized because I was just reading it earlier, but like the housing sales dropping from like, an 11% climb to like 4%. Like it's a drastic shift. So, that the predictions they just had before they came with these ones were not that long ago. They're just a few months ago. So like, information comes out and markets change and things adjust going forward. So, when you're a client or somebody looking to buy a house, you've got to deal in the here right now. What can I afford? What can I buy? What's this do to my budget? Plan for those things that could, change variably, insurance, taxes, whatever other costs those might look like. Give yourself a buffer. And sometimes that, unfortunately might mean like, hey, yes, I want to buy an $800,000 house, but that might mean I might need to look at $600,000 houses. That's an uncomfortable, unpopular topic that, people that do what we do don't necessarily want to bring up. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I think we're in a particularly interesting time because inflation is coming down. And to that point, we're in a situation where inflation can go back up pretty quickly. And it feels like every CPI report, every jobs report, every Fed meeting, we're seeing this sort of prediction market go up and down and up and down, and
it's a pinball machine.
It just proves to you that really nobody knows what's going on fully. Nobody can predict what's going to happen. They were predicting 6 cuts by the end of the year. We're going to get 2, maybe 3 in the Fed funds rate. So you just can't bank on that. Go after what you can go after now, and then like you said, if an opportunity presents itself in the future, well, then you just have an opportunity to save more money in the future for your family, for your social life, for your vacation fund, for the next house, whatever you want. So
for sure. Yeah, don't strap yourself. That's my number one advice to people. Just don't strap yourself into a position that you can't get out of. You just can't do it.
Let's pivot to social media strategy, and you talked a little bit about you shooting content later, and I'd love to hear more about what you're doing. Obviously, you just showed me some cool AI tool that is feeding you really neat articles on a regular basis. You can go in and check it anytime. It's feeding you local articles related to real estate, Florida, Ohio, national. Tell me a little bit about that, and then also speak to me about you're shooting content pretty regularly.
Sure. As far as social media goes, like for me this year, I've implemented probably more in the last 6-7 months than I have in most of my career, in just terms of adjustments and investments into my business. And one of the biggest things has been social media, right? Creating that, presence to use to sell to. Marketing will soften your sales, right? Like if you go out to try to sell with no marketing whatsoever, that can get tough. So, social media content is an opportunity to soften that that blow when I go to sit down and talk to somebody, whether that be, a home buyer or consumer themselves, or, I'm selling as a loan officer. I'm selling to home buyers. I'm selling
Yep.
to realtors. I'm selling to financial planners, and other
Right.
people who can,
Right.
refer home buyers to us. So how can I soften that conversation? So that's been a big piece of it. And for me, like, what's been a big change in my business this year, and I know I'm kind of getting, I'm weaving here a little bit, is the, I've reframed everything, and it's become very important to me to work within a framework in each area of my business. Like, so when it comes to social media content, what does that mean? Whenever I go to create a video, I look at, within our coaching community, what we call 3 E's. So when I make a piece of content, I'm looking to do one of three things. Educate somebody. There's a topic that, I want to educate them on. Whether that's a loan program, whether that's something with an article or local real estate news, whatever that might be, I want to get that in front of them. Number 2 would be empower them. So, maybe that's sharing a success story about how somebody else overcame an obstacle to buy a house, or, whatever that is. That's something to make a potential person feel good about working with us or taking that next step. And then the last piece is entertain. And entertain, not necessarily, I mean, you can, that's not my cup of tea. In the sense, not necessarily in the sense of like doing TikTok dances, but like letting people behind the curtain and letting them, see the person, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I'm posting, it's educate, it's empower, and entertain. And it's got to fit in one of those. Otherwise, what I'm probably posting is some sort of, hey, look at me type of thing. And
right.
What I like to do with my content is, instead of look at me, come with me type of thing. So let's like reframe that, right? Not trying to get somebody to say, hey, look at what I'm doing. So whenever I sit down and I make content, that's kind of the framework that I start within. And where I go with that week to week can kind of vary depending on, what I've had go on, whether I had it, the last couple of weeks, it's been a lot of success stories. We've had a couple of unique things we've done recently. I've done a lot of reaction videos, and that's more from an educate standpoint. And it's also an entertain piece too, because it's like, you let somebody behind the curtain a little bit in terms of your opinions on things and popular content, or maybe,
what do you think
a
about
popular figure says X, Y, or Z, and people think, well, man, well, so-and-so says that, maybe I've got a contrary opinion to what that might be. So you try to do what you can to be as engaging as possible. And then, I think from there, that establishes, that brand, which then, allows for that conversation to start. So, for me, I like to do that. I kind of batch shoot everything. So I'll like sit down in a few hours in time block. And I know it's one of the things we put on our list of potential to talk about, but like, I've become very, like, my schedule looks like a kid with Tourette's threw up on it with crayons. So it's like, I'm very intentional about my time. So, if I'm shooting content, I'm shutting out all distractions. I'm closing out windows. I'm not hopping on Facebook looking at 5 other things. It's like, okay, I've got these 2-3 hours. I'm going to batch my ideas. And then throughout the week, speaking to the articles, like, if I see something that like sparks an interest and I'm like, oh, I might want to shoot an article about that. Like, I have a folder that I'll kind of pull those articles and throw them all in there. So then that way, before I go to kind of ideate what I want to talk about, I'll go in there, kind of go through some of those things, and go from there. That process or that framework for anybody is where you have to start. Who's my ideal client that I want to attract? Who do I want to work with? What do and then from there, educate, empower, entertain to attract that person. So one thing in the last, I think I started doing like full-time content stuff probably July. And I'm starting to get much more narrow in terms of my focus and in terms of topics. So one of the things,
How have
like
you seen that affect your business?
one of the things for me, because again, going back to what my main, my job here is to make the phones ring, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's I've got a team in place. I do all the initial consultations, all the rate lock consultations. I've got a team that handles getting file from A to Z. My job is let's go make the phones ring. And with social media, what that's done is I've been able to engage much more actively with other people's content than on social media, and then turn those into opportunities. Because when you are engaging, okay, who's this guy? Let me go see what he's doing. And then they go to my page, and then there's like, well, this guy's got like videos for days on here. And, you got to think about it like how you go look at content, so you're like, oh, this person's got a lot of stuff. And you start kind of swiping, scrolling through. And then subconsciously you become, whether you know what you're doing or not, you become somewhat of an authority figure just by having it out there. So then that's just started more conversations, more so than anything, which then has enabled the phone string. So not necessarily for me, it hasn't been like, hey, I post all these videos and leads just start pouring in, from Instagram. Because Instagram's where I do most of my stuff, 90% of it. But it's more about, okay, let's create this, authority figure on a subject matter. And then behind the scenes, I'm using that to position myself for conversations with people to demonstrate the value that I add to what they're doing. And then at the end of the day, I think more and more people are wanting to do content. So it gives me an opportunity to, sit down and even just brainstorm with them. Like, okay, well, what do you want it? Like, let me help you with it. Not necessarily get on video with you. You go do your videos, but like, can I help you, solidify your process in terms of your ideas and how you ideate and, how you script and, what you're doing. That at the end of the day is more impactful to somebody's, a realtor or somebody's business than, us doing some sort of Zillow spend together, whatever other thing. Like, let me actually invest into your business.
Right.
As opposed to, some other avenue.
Well, I think that's important. I think that this figuring out a way to help raise the tide.
Yeah,
give people
the market space
right?
is shifting, right? Like, to me, I had this conversation with someone the other day. The loan piece of what we do, for me at this point in my career, is the easy part. I can figure out a difficult loan or whatever it might be in my sleep. Like, that's not. It's almost like a prerequisite. Like, if you can't figure out that part, then you going and doing a bunch of social media marketing is a waste of time. So you need to figure that part out first if you don't have that. But at this point, that part is dialed in. And I've got
and you have the systems, you have the leverage
to get from A to B. So okay, now I've got that in place. Let's go dial this in. Let's go make the phones ring. And then I'm also one thing I'm doing in this next year is getting a little bit more narrow in my focus in terms of the type of person I want to attract with my content. And then letting people behind the scenes a little bit more. That's not something I'm great at. I'm the first one to kind of, I think most people are this way. You kind of discount what personal value you might bring to someone else as well. So that's another big piece for me and sharing your story, right?
Yeah. Especially in our industry where you feel like, at times it's easy to feel like a small fish in a big pond, right?
Sure.
Lots of lenders, lots of realtors out there. But again, I think it's understanding your value, thinking about where you bring expertise.
I was going to share this. Let's see if I can find this.
And just being able to show that and have confidence in it. as well is something that is really important right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'm going back to a conference I was at earlier. I had to pull up my notebook. You create a character for yourself on social media. I don't mean character in terms of your acting, but like, who are you?
Mhm.
And the question you're trying to answer for somebody is, why should I follow you beyond your knowledge?
Mhm.
Right. So, you've got to
Value.
present yourself as a character with who you are, and you can't fake it. You've got to, what's your origin? How did you come up? Where are you at, presently? Have some vulnerability. And you never know what you might say or something that you do how that might resonate with somebody. And again, I think you go about your content in a way of, I think if you approach it from the standpoint of like, hey, how is this helping someone else?
Mhm.
You're going to go way further in terms of like, it's easy to fall into a trap. Like, what can I post that's going to get the most people to look at it?
Mhm.
Right. I think that's an
Right.
easy trap. People fall in like, I don't want to post that. I don't know if many people will look at that. I
We
think
know
that's
people. I think we know people that will post stuff
right.
that's
Well, you see
how
some of
many.
I'm going to make somebody mad. I don't care. Like, you see some of these like listing videos and things like that, or you see stuff people post, and I'm like, what? I mean, this is obviously a ploy for people. Hey, look at me, right?
Mhm.
Like, who
Mhm.
are you helping with what you just did? You're not helping anybody. And that's not to say there's not a time and a place for having fun with things, but at the same time, if that's all you're doing, that's your social media strategy. Like, I mean, the probability that you're just going to become the viral person is not high. Um,
Right.
and so when I'm on top of the 3 E's, it's like, okay, what can I create that is going to help someone else? And if you do that, who do I want to help? How do I help them? Create it. At the end of the day, you're going to get way more traction if you're consistent.
The other thing that you sort of touched on there that I think is really important is there's a lot of realtors out there that, and this is, yeah, definitely going to get me in trouble. Um, I think we'll die on this boat together, Steve. But
That's fine.
uh, there's a lot of realtors out there that focus on like doing a listing video that gets as many eyeballs on it as possible. The problem is you are, putting on a costume or putting on, doing something crazy, and the in most cases the only thing you remember is the crazy thing you do. You don't take in the house,
Yeah.
and so you couldn't you have somebody watch the video, they can't tell you anything about the house after they watch it. They're just focused on you, and sure, it's a way that you can bring a few extra people to your page or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
You maybe get some more, but
You can sprinkle that stuff in, but if that is like your
yeah,
content strategy, it's just
yeah,
that.
right,
Let me be as outlandish as I can be. And that's not to call out anybody for any videos. I mean, that applies to a lot of things. Like, I guess if that is your personality, where you're at least being authentic, sure. But I feel like we're in a space where I was debating whether I wanted to go there, but you hear people talking, hey, the commission topic, for example.
yeah,
I'm
hmm,
I'm worth X, right?
hmm,
This is how I demonstrate X. But if you're gonna go wear a chicken costume, like
yeah.
those,
You're degrading yourself to a degree. I
yeah,
think,
there's a sense of professionalism that, no, I'm not saying everybody's got to be be a stiff and be in a suit, but at the same time, like, you know, who am I going to help? That's going to get you your dollars way before you do anything else. Who can I help? How can I help them? Where is there a need? And it puts you in a place where you're looking outside of yourself. How do I serve someone else? And you're always going to put yourself in a better spot.
Yeah. And are you doing the listing video for your client, or are you doing it for you? I mean, that's a big piece of it. Is like, oh, I'm gonna do this amazing video, we're gonna get tons of eyeballs on it. But at the end of the day, if you're doing it so you can get more views on social media and you get more
But don't get me
followers.
wrong, get your views, get your people on your page. I mean, sure.
But I mean,
But yeah, I'm with you.
there's a level of who are you doing it for?
Sure.
And so don't sit there in front of your client and tell them, I'm doing
Educate, empower,
this.
entertain.
Right.
If it fits there, it's probably going to be fine. Otherwise, and again, like I said, it's not that you can't sprinkle in some of those things, but if it's just like constant, LOs do it. The one thing I've seen with loan officers, and I've got a gripe with this, is, and I hope they all see it. I hope they all get pissed about it. Sharing your production.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares your production numbers. I mean, maybe a realtor somewhat, somebody can see, I sold however many houses, but for a long, like there's no context to that. Like when you put that out there, that comes back to, hey, look at me.
Yeah. And a loan is an inanimate object at the end of the day.
Right. There's no, and how does there is no context to the consumer for what that even means. Like you got to put yourself in their shoes. And like, if I'm a client and I'm kind of scrolling and I'm connected with you on social media and I'm like, oh, I think that's good. I guess. Yeah. You sold, or you did 10 loans. Is that good? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's no context. Nobody knows what that means. I've just got, I'm not an expert, like I said, I've just got started, getting super serious about content in the last 6 months, but it's kind of funny once you get into it and you start engaging actively with other people's things. And that's the same for, I guess, a tidbit of advice, even for agents. Like I'm engaging in other realtors' content. And then in my past clients' content, if I've got a client that, Bobby scored his first soccer goal, I'm going to engage in that and I'm going to comment on it. And you know what I might do? I might send them a card in the mail or something like that. So you can use your social media and your presence on social media to connect with people. That's what it's there for, is to connect. Everybody has, it talks about like a CRM. Your social media is your CRM.
It's a CRM. Yeah. It's one of your CRMs, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, and if you don't have all your clients in there, like, what are you doing? Right. At least the ones that are active on there. Because there's so many opportunities to engage and interact in a more
foster that relationship.
Yeah, in a more personal way too, where like, hey, your CRM's probably, sending just marketing generated type stuff. Hey, here's my home value. Hey, here's this article. Here's that. Like, how are you connecting with somebody on a personal level? Like I just sent out my first couple, like official formatted as a newsletter, right? One of the other things I'm working on is, and I'll have it out here in the next, well, not next week because I'm going to be in Mexico, but the following week is a client newsletter, but not in the sense that most people do them, where it's like, hey, the same thing, like, hey, here's your home value, here's this article, here's what's going on locally. Like I want to connect personally with people. Let me share what's going on in my life. Let me share, an empowering moment. Maybe we help someone, in some form or fashion. So it's going to be more personally directed that way, as opposed to the stereotypical marketing type emails, to engage people on a personal level, because that's lost on many people.
Yeah. So let's transition a little bit to database management and
yes.
Sort of how you work through that, how you think about that. You touched on it a little bit.
Sure. Number one, I can't tell you how many people just don't have either A, an official CRM, or B, like an official client list, or, somewhere, right? It's just,
I didn't have one until 2020, Steve.
There's a lot that still don't. I would say if you do nothing else, at least connect with all your clients on social media. Like if
Mhm.
that were you had nothing, like no dollars to do it, like, hey, I'm a new agent and I've got I've been in the business 6 years and I've never had at least go connect with everybody on social media. You've got something
Mhm.
that's a free, doesn't cost you a dollar. Um, and again, within the mindset of frameworks on my side, that looks a certain way. For a real estate agent, that's going to look a little different. But for me, it's those touch points. Okay, so I've got the newsletter that's going to go
Mhm.
monthly. So there's
Mhm.
one. Um, our process in terms of from start to finish all the way through is it encompasses that. So we're doing the weekly updates that we do for agents. We do those for the buyer too.
Right.
So they know what's going on. Post close, about a week or two post close, we're touching base with every client. Where it's an opportunity to connect, maybe see how the move went, see if there's any feedback that they'll give you about the process, anything to improve on. Maybe there's some gripes they've already got with the house, so you can put them in connection with somebody in your network to help them. Again, how can I help this person? And then we set the stage for us reaching out next year for an annual mortgage review. So
Mhm.
throughout the year, there's those monthly touch points. I personally reach out to everybody on their birthday, whether that's you know a video message, or I've started doing a lot of voice notes to
Okay.
people.
Yeah.
So it's not just a text message; it's a little bit
I like that.
more personal. And depending on how well I connected with the client, a lot of times I've been actually just calling them, like on all my days now are themed. So like on Mondays, I'm doing all my batch shooting for my social media stuff. On Tuesdays, I'm doing updates. On Wednesdays, I'm doing all my it's my main call day. Thursdays, I'm calling past clients. Fridays, kind of a hodgepodge of whatever I need to get caught up on for the week. In terms of people that I didn't get to on those of the week, but you know, um, so I'm reaching out on birthdays. In a lot of cases, I'm calling them now on their birthday, or at least the week of, like on those Thursdays when I'm doing past client outreach. I'll call everybody that's got a birthday in the whole next week,
Yeah.
and I'll just
Yeah.
time block a couple hours, and if anything, and they pick up the phone, I take 2-3 minutes just to connect and say what's up, and not talk about anything even mortgage related.
So
Um,
my CRM and through Cutler, we have like a custom designed CRM, and my CRM is um, a lot of it's focused on touch point automation, right? And so a lot of the pieces that I'm doing are um, things that are custom designed from me, and then I can sort of set it and forget it.
yeah,
And then that allows me to then focus on the social media touch points, like you were talking about, engaging with people, communicating with them through phone call, text message, whatever. It allows me to focus on that, where I'm uh, sort of doing the automation is when you close, you have a 1 week, a 1 month, 3 month, a 6 month, and a 1 year touch point, where it's, hey, how are things going? It's initially starts
sure,
like, congratulations, just hope you're doing well. Have you had a chance to move in yet, or whatever? If they got possession right away, then it transitions into, hey, what are you liking about your neighborhood? Tell me a little bit about, is there, you have a favorite coffee shop, you have a favorite restaurant? Um, Touching on those sort of things in the middle, and then have quarterly emails that go out that have sort of a, here's what's going on in your market.
yeah,
It's going to hit like things that have sold in your neighborhood. It's going to hit things that are on the market in your neighborhoods. Give you an idea of where the market is headed. It includes graphs and has uh, a sort of price per square foot breakdown, sort of leads you to where the market is currently at on a quarterly basis and give you an idea of what's going on around you in case you're not monitoring that. Then we have a monthly newsletter that goes out, has, some events that are local. It'll touch on some local news. And then additionally, it'll have market updates like statistics for the individual neighborhood you're in. And you can sort of play around with that and see stats of on a month-to-month basis, on a year-over-year basis, here's where we're seeing the sales and stuff. And so you have that statistical piece, you have the personal piece, you have the value piece where you're saying like, okay, here's some fall things to do this fall locally. Some great local businesses are having events, things like that, and just sort of giving more value in that regard.
Yeah, no, it's good. And the other piece for me on like, so there's just so many opportunities that are missed for database touch points. Everybody, it's so everybody's like, hey, where do I get the next client? Where do I get the next client? Like an acquisition of a client, right? Well, you've got a whole database of people that could be referring you clients. You need to be working that is a much more sustainable way to feed your business than, hey, where do I go find somebody that wants to
because the conversion rate's totally different. I mean,
through the roof.
Yeah, you're looking at 50 to 60, I think 66% for people in your database versus 10% at best.
Yeah, 10% would be good.
Yeah, 10% at best for certain types of leads. But the other thing that I'm doing as well, I have automation of social media. So I have blogs that are coming out through my team, and then blogs that are coming out through my brokerage that are going out almost daily basis to LinkedIn, to Twitter, to Facebook, that are all just sort of informational, educational, whatever, that are all going to provide some value to different people. Then that allows me to feed in gaps on every space. I'm doing Facebook, I'm doing Twitter, I'm doing YouTube, I'm doing Instagram, I'm doing LinkedIn, I'm doing TikTok, and I'm just like slowly doing all of those rather than just hammering one over and over again. And certainly like Instagram to a degree is where I'm focused.
Sure.
The most.
Where the most eyes goes. There in TikTok are where the most eyes go.
Yeah. And so that's where like the effort is. But again, part of it is when I'm making content that can go on any of those spaces. And if you have content that you're shooting and you can repurpose it, it's easy for me to just boom, 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 post it on a number of different sites. And then all of a sudden you're in 5 places at once.
Sure.
And hitting 5 different audiences. That's really powerful. And once you have taken the time to build it out and have the framework in place, then it's just super easy to be able to do that when you're able to make content.
Sure. I mean, what's the saying? The grass is greenest where you water it, right? So, I mean, if for your database, you have to, if you want to get deals from your database, you got to call your database. Like it's not like a rocket science problem. So, for me, there's other pieces that go into that. There's, gifting, like I'll have that, a very systemized, like I've just implemented all my systems this year. So like a system around gifting and, who gets what, based on this closing and this person referred a deal, so they get something. And then, every month picking a handful of people that, I've engaged with on social media. So I see something, so I just send them something, whether it's, it could just be something, corny at the same time. Like, hey, just thinking about you type of thing. right?
The mailman must have missed me today, Steve.
But I mean, when you look at managing your database, that's where those like, I know most people just think, well, I did a good job. This person's going to refer me and they're going to use me again. And that is a moronic way to go about your business and just assume that that's going to happen. Will it happen some? Sure, it will happen some. But, I think the NAR put out some stats, like there was, some insane percentage, like north of 70% of people said that they would use their real estate agent again, but only like 20% of them, or some a percentage much lower, actually did. And that just proves the fact that, like, no matter what you do, you have to stay in contact with people or you're out of sight, out of mind. These are people that had a good experience that are like, hey, yeah, I would use my person again. And then they never did. And that's criminal, because you just didn't, like, that's like layup. That's a layup. And you just let it go.
It's how can you provide value? And, it's sort of laughing because I'm thinking about, I spent some time living in Chicago and have a bunch of family there, and just went back to visit this weekend. But one of the jokes, in Chicago is like, I got a guy for that. I got a guy, and you think of anything that you need something done, you get car guy, I got a guy. I got a guy. You just say to somebody, I got a guy.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to become that guy by becoming ever present, valuable, and in communication and top of mind throughout their entire journey, and not just in the middle of this transaction. So I've seen so many ways that I've become more ever present and gotten way more referrals once I set up a CRM, because people felt way more connected to me, and it just exploded. I think within months of setting up that CRM and being serious about it, you saw it right away, and people took me more seriously because they saw how much I was bringing to them through every different channel, whether it's through email, through phone calls, through social media. Treated me more like a business, less like a friend, less like a acquaintance, and more like a powerful business, because they saw how much effort I was putting into it and how much I was ever present to them and bringing them value.
Sure.
Right?
Of course. It's good stuff, man. Yeah. And a lot of it, man, I really feel anybody, whether they're real estate or, any type of career where you're, at the end of the day, you're sales driven, your activity is going to precede the results. So you've got to go put in the activity and got to go do the things. If you've, a lot of people, I see everybody posting about everybody and their brother's got, a goal planning session here at the end of the year. Like, hey, come to our goals, our business planning session or whatever. And, that's all well and good. Set your goals, set your targets. But if you're not focused on the activities, you take your goals and just throw them in the trash. Like, they're pointless, right? Like, if you don't have systems in place and you don't have daily activity targets in place, that you're committed to hitting every day, your goals are garbage. You might get lucky, but you've got to make a commitment to the activities, not the goals.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to eventually, squat 500 pounds, I've got to go do the work every week to do that. Like, I don't just dream it and then it just like, okay, it's gonna, like, your business is no different. If I want to go lose 50 pounds, I've got to eat a certain way, and I got to be committed to doing what I'm supposed to do every day. Your business, like, the goal is irrelevant to the overall trajectory. It's the activities. You got to go do what it takes. And I see all these people, I've got this elaborate business plan, and then, you talk to them, March of next year, hey, how's your business plan going? Well, it didn't go anywhere because you weren't dialed in on the how, versus the where, I guess. And, when it comes to, we've talked about content, we've talked about database management, you've got to get very focused on, okay, for social media, I'm going to post a piece of content every day, whatever that is. That is such an easy target to hit. And think about that. They say you only do that 5 days a week. There's 52 weeks in a year, 5 days a week. What's that? That's 200 and whatever, 260
videos.
Right? Yeah, 260 pieces of content in a year, right? Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, that's just one piece a day.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be some super elaborate, edited video. But that's one thing I'm going to, and I will engage with 10 pieces of someone else, of other people's content every day. You're scrolling on Instagram and Facebook anyway. Engage with the client, engage with the prospect, engage with somebody on there. Not, get something for your time, hours that you're spending wasting your time on social media. I'm going to call 3 past clients every day. How long does it take you to call 3 clients? You can get it done in 30 minutes and have a 10-minute conversation with everyone. So and that kind of leads over and then to your time management. How am I blocking up and chopping up my time? How are my days themed? What direction am I going in? It's the equivalent of, going into a football game and not having a game plan. Like, hey, what are we going to run? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Like,
that's when you end up on your phone scrolling.
Yes.
That's when you end up, putzing around, taking too much time to do X, Y, and Z, and lose track of endless amount of time that you had to do the things that you were talking about doing, planning on doing.
It takes to be successful. It takes a lot, but it doesn't take as much as you think. If that, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of an oxymoron. Like, it takes a lot, but a lot is not as much as you think, especially if you get dialed in with your time management. And, that's one thing that's been a big change for me in the last 6 months, is just getting ultra dialed in with my calendar and doing a look at, how much time I'm spending doing things that either A, I could probably delegate to somebody else, or B, that are just time wastes and I shouldn't be doing them. They're not in alignment with my goals, right? Like, if you've got a goal, you've got to make decisions about what you do with your time to get you there. Otherwise, then you're not serious about your goal. You don't really have a goal. You just, you have a pipe dream of some sort that you think is going to happen on its own.
The other thing that I think is important, I think, to that effect, is treating your brand like a business, and working on that brand from a lot of realtors just focus on the deals, working the deals, whatever. And I think that the more you focus on building out a platform, building out a loudspeaker, building out a megaphone, and also a landing pad, a place for people to find you, a place for people to learn about you, the more you focus on that, the more you're going to find organic deals, people that come to you, that want to work with you, that choose to work with you, have more trust, make it easier to convert because they have the trust. I think there's a lot of realtors I know that just sort of sit around and wait for deals to come to them, and they're sort of ho-hum about it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you've got to call people to action in your social media, right? Like, you've got to have something of value. What can I give away to somebody else that's going to help them with value? And then how can I have a call to action from that?
Yeah.
I mean,
I love that piece, frankly. I love that the piece of sort of focusing on um, adding layers on top of just what I do every day, how I
Sure.
service a deal every day, adding layers on top of my business over time,
Sure.
um, while creating the automations, the leverage with um, transaction coordinators and other people in my um, team that are doing work for me.
Sure.
Um, creating those layers as I add more stuff that is just adding to the amount of deals I can take care of over the year. And when we've had the slowest year since 1991, um, it's still created a sustainable business where I've had a great year um, in spite of it. So,
I mean, there are deals to be had, but you got to go find them and you've got to be
mhm,
seen. So if you
mhm,
think you're just going to do what you've always done to have success, that it just isn't going to work that way. Um,
yeah,
and in addition to that, why not get those things done and put them in place now? So if the market does shift, you're going to be so far ahead of, you're going to be lapping everyone. I mean,
mhm,
why you're not going to build the plane in the air if the market takes a turn. Go get your processes in place, get your things in place, so that way, if and when things take a turn and volume picks up, you're already running.
to
You got a head
catapult,
start.
right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly. There's no, um, you know, that's one of the things, like early on in the year, like when I invested in coaching and invested in some things in my business, I was like, you know what? Um, Logically speaking, like if you just use just general logic, like does the timing of that necessarily make sense? Maybe not. But I'm like, no, when everyone else is, finding a way to just be sustainable, I'm gonna dig in, I'm gonna invest more, I'm gonna do all of these things. So that way, one, they're in place, and then two, whenever things do eventually normalize, I don't like using that terminology, but whenever they do normalize, it's there. And I'm gonna lap you.
Mhm.
Um, and good luck catching up, because you're not going to be able to, because you'll be too busy to get any of those things dialed in. Um, use those things as an opportunity, um, or those times as an opportunity to invest and grow your business, grow your knowledge. Like, how much time are you spending reading and studying your craft and your sales and consumer psychology, and whatever it is, books on time management, books on marketing, there's so much out there that you could be doing to grow your business and grow your knowledge, to put yourself in a position to take advantage of things. And it's the people that aren't doing it will be the first ones complaining when they don't get what they want. um,
That's right.
it doesn't grow on a tree. Hey, instead of going out one night, maybe you're a couple nights a week, you're going to stay home and, like, hey, I got, I'm working on my business. Like,
Mhm. That's right.
maybe you got to cut people out of your circle because they're not in alignment with your goal. But that's my TED talk.
Well, on that note, this has been another episode of Game Plans. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, everybody. Thank you.
Uh,
Share it with
like
a
and
friend.
subscribe. Yeah, share it with a friend. Follow us on YouTube. Peace.